In this part of the tutorial, I'm going to go over the final practice CCC. So this is an example of the second programming question you'll see in the final exam. Again, my goal is to talk about how to strategize to get as many points as possible in this example. And it's basically the same strategy of the last example. Develop your code incrementally, make sure it's error-free, test often, and try to get as many test scores as possible, and focus on the early ones, the easy ones. Once again, you start by reading the description of the problem. Try to read it completely in detail before you jump to code. So I suggest you pause for a minute and read the description here. And then also take a look at the code I provide. So in this part, I'm saying that, specifying that there is a class person, but you can't change it, you don't need to edit it, and you need to work on another class called human resource. And I'm providing a main method that contains some testing code for you that you can uncomment and test to make sure you develop your code incrementally. And each one of these scenarios will have a corresponding test case. So that's the class person, which is actually the class person from the first part. So this is kind of a logical continuum of the example. We develop the class person. And in the company, we would like to keep track of all persons in the company. And this is why we have this class human resource. Let's take a look at the bullet points here. It's asking us to create an array list in the class human resource in order to store persons. And then it's asking us to implement a default constructor to initialize that attribute to the array list, plus a couple of other methods. Okay, so again, what makes sense is really to nail down the easy ones. We've got 8 test codes here. It will also help to take a look at how they are giving you the point. 1 point for defining the person's attribute in human resource, 1 point for defining the constructor, implementing the constructor, and then 1 point for defining these methods, plus a point for each scenario. Again, the early testing scores will just test if you have created that attribute constructor method. They won't test the details, the implementation. So it makes sense to create a method and provide a method stub, even if you don't know how to complete it. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with the attribute, human resource, and this one is an array list. Again, this is an empty class, so you need to import the class array list before you use it. Now let's say you forget to import the class array list and you rush and create your array list of persons, because this one stores data about persons. I want to store an array list of person object here. That's very similar to the class container, to the example container ship. And then I want to give it a name. So at this point, why don't you try to run your program or submit? I'm going to run because it's faster than submission. If I try to run, I'm going to get that error here. So what makes sense really is to fix this error before trying to finish the details here, because you can't build on something which is not working, right? You need to fix it, make it workable, and then finish the details. Just try to reason about this error. Eclipse will probably give you a better suggestion of how to solve it. It will actually suggest you import the class from the package. Here it's saying it's on line number 3 and is not finding the symbol array list. Why is it not finding the symbol array list? Because it's not imported. So you have to import the class array list from the package, right? Fix that error and run your code, and you will see that it compiles fine, right? And you can submit and you will get 1 or 2 points, probably 1 point at this point, right? But again, it's essential to ensure that your code is error-free. If you're doing this on Eclipse, it's much easier because you will get like a red highlight whenever you do something wrong. If you're doing it on Zybook, try to run often and make sure you don't get compile time errors. So that's that. Let's create the method, the constructor's human resource to initialize the attribute. And what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to just create an empty constructor. So it's a constructor's stub at this point. And I'm going actually to create method stubs for all of these methods. Add, search, and also search here, the overloaded version. Okay. So I'm telling you what each method does, right? It takes one as a parameter, and this one I'm not specifying it returns anything, so it should be a void method. Same thing for search. If the method has to return something, I will tell you explicitly what you need to return. Those methods don't return anything, they just print when they're processing the data in the collection. Okay? Again, take a look here. It doesn't return anything. It's just a method add person human resource. Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to create method stubs for add, search first. So the method public void add person, person p. The method stub for a void method is the easy one because you don't need to return anything. It's this method returns a string. You need to return like a dummy string value. This one doesn't return anything, so you don't need to do anything, just a stub. And then the method search that takes a string. Keyword. And supposed to search in that collection. And then the method search that takes two parameters, query and password, and does things, right? Forget about the details. Let's just define a method search that takes two parameters, search string keyword and string password. Okay, again, this is overloading this method. This one takes one parameter, this one takes two. So I provided the attribute, the constructor, three methods. Let's see. Hopefully this code will be compiled error-free, and if so, it will try to run the test cases. We've got 8, and you'll probably get 4 or 5. Oops, we only got 2. So we got the method add person, search, string and string, and we've got some compile time errors here. Let's take a look again. It's not the method add person, it's the method add. Okay, and the method search as well. So it's not the method add person, the name of the method is add. So again, we pay attention to the details here. I kind of rushed creating the method. So it's the method add to add person, and then two methods, search and search string. Let's submit now and see if we get that. So of course, I forgot to read the details here. And this method is returning something. It returns true if the match is found and false if no match is found. Similarly, this one needs to return true or false depending on whether a match is found or not. So again, I committed this mistake that I was warning you about. I did not read this in details. And as you can see here, this unit test failed and this unit test failed, although I provided the method search here, right? So again, add instead of add person gave us the point. And this one apparently needs to return something, a Boolean value. Okay, so because it returns something, you need to return something, right? So I'm going just to return false for now, just to complete that method stub, and then finish the details later, right? If I do this, I should get 2 extra points for the search, for those 2 bullet points defining the method, search and this one. Okay, so I've got those 2 extra points, one for person, search, and search. Okay, so let's take a look at main. Here, in main, we can test our code incrementally. So this is creating a human resource object, and then creating 3 person objects, and then adding these persons to the human resource. And then scenario 1 is basically trying to look for a match with the keyword JA. So we will need to report back Jack and Chengjiang because both of them have GA. Okay. Of course, to be able to do that, we need to finish the details of the constructor and also the details of the methods. And this is where your knowledge about collections will become essential. But again, without this knowledge, you still were able to score a lot of points just finishing out the class implementation. Okay? And by chance, you kind of hit this one, which was supposed to return false, false, false. So that was a nice accident. But as you can see here, you at least can score half of the question before thinking about the implementation. Just getting the structure fine, and then create the stubs and think about the details. All right, so let's think about the details here. In the default constructor, we need to initialize the attribute persons. How do we do that? So we create the object here. It would have been the same if you've done it here, right? If you've done it here, that's the same effect. I'm going to keep it in the constructor. Next, the method addPerson in human resource should take the person and add it to the collection. How do we add a person, an object to the collection? We call the method add, pass it to that array list. Okay, and this method is basically very similar to that method we've done in the restaurant search engine. Basically, it will need to go over each object in that collection and look for a matching record when the person name contains the query string, and that match should be case insensitive. So that's the same logic, and maybe at this point it helps to take a look at your notes from the assignment submission or the solutions I posted. But basically that's the same logic. I'm going to start with boolean found, which will be false initially, and at the end I want to return found. And then for each person P in the collection, I want to test if there is a match. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get string name will be p.getName, right? That's the getter method in the person object. And actually I want to convert it to lowercase because that is what the assignment is asking you to make the case insensitive. And then if there is a match, if name contains keyword, which I also want to convert to lowercase. So by converting both of them to the same casing, lower or upper, both of them, I make the match case insensitive. If this is the case, first thing I need to do is to flag that found is true so that I return this value afterwards. And then it's asking me to print found plus the string representation of the found person. So what I'm going to do system out print line found plus the string representation. How do we get the string representation of a person object? We call the method toString. Or even if you don't call it, the moment you concatenate an object to a string, the method toString will be called, so it's up to you. we can just do found plus p, and that's it. If we go here and let's test scenario 1 in main, we should see found Jack and found Ching Jiang, and then the result will be true. Let's run the program here. We got a compile time error. Okay, so let's not freak out and let's try to fix it. It's telling us that in the class human resource, the file humanresource.java, at line 21 there is an error which is expecting a parenthesis that we did not provide. Okay, so let's go to that location and fix the error. Don't mess up something else and hope it will work. It will not work. Line 21. Let's look. This one closes the contains parenthesis, and this one will close the parenthesis for the if. Let's run. Hopefully this time without that mistake. And we got found Jack and found Ching Jiang and true. So it looks okay, and hopefully if we submit we can get like one. Scenario 1 scored. Of course scenario 2 will not be scored because this method is still a stub. And actually we can try doing it, running it, and see what we get. Alright, so we got 7 out of 8, almost there. So let's run scenario 2. If you run scenario 2, you will not see the SSN because the method will not see anything actually because this method is not operating yet. Okay. Alright, so let's go to the class human resource and let's try to finish the method search. The method search is basically that takes two parameters is identical, except that it will try to unlock the person using the password. So it's basically the same code for search, and I can use this code. Now, there is a way to make the code less redundant, but in the exam, you're focusing on getting the most points, right? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to ignore the fact that I duplicated this code. This is the code for search. The only thing you need to do before trying to print that person object is to try to unlock it. p.unlock and then password. And if the password is correct, you should get the SSN printed out. Back to main. Scenario 2 should give you back 111 and 123, 123 because the password is correct. And that's right. Okay. So if you run, you should get the point for scenario 2. Let's finish up by looking at scenario 3. Scenario 3 is basically looking for something that doesn't exist. So the method should return false, but also should print no personal record matching that. And if you run, you can see that it doesn't print out this statement because the method is essentially returning true or false. If this value is false, we need to print that message. So let's go back to person and finish, to human resource and finish this detail. That's your method. Before returning found, if not found, I want to do system out print line. Print line this statement, no personal record matching the query. So that's it, matching space plus the query. And the query here is a keyword instead of query. So, and I need to do it also here because I duplicated the code. Once again, there is a better way to do it to avoid duplication, and essentially you can create like one big method in this method, you can basically test whether there is a password passed or not. And if there is no password, you don't try to unlock using the password. Okay, so there is a way to avoid duplication, but again, the goal here is to get most points from the exam. So let's run. Seems to be fine. It's printing no record matching, and let's submit for the last time. And hopefully we will get all of the points. All right, 8 out of 8. Now that you scored all points, you have more time to improve this code organizationally and structurally. Again, the biggest offense here is duplicating the code, which is essentially the same, except that there is only one statement here, which is unlock. So one way to do it is to basically say, well, so this one is exactly similar to this one, right? So what I can do this.search keyword and provide a password. Well, I need to provide a password, so I can provide something like no password or something, but I'm going to provide null just to fill in this parameter here. And all I need to do is to check whether password here is not null. Okay? So I made this method relies on this one. I did not duplicate the code. I'm just passing null as a special value, which I test for before trying to unlock. That's essentially the same program. It would provide exactly the same result without duplication. Okay, again, we messed things up. Don't worry, you will get the highest score, and don't freak out. Let's fix the mistake. Most likely it's a bracket, and it's an offending bracket here. Missing return statement. It's a missing return statement because this .search keyword null is returning something, so I'm going to return that. Or I can do boolean b this the result of this method and then return b. All right, so and again, if I submit, I should get 8 out of 8. All right, so hopefully this will give you more guidance of how to strategize and develop your code incrementally for the test. Again, I'm providing so many test cases on purpose so that you get most points that you can get. Each test case is a substantial effort on me to write and code and again test. So make sure you benefit from this. Try to get the test cases, the early ones, especially the ones that test for structure. Internalize the class structure in your mind. Fields, constructors, methods, getter and setter methods are essential. Create method stubs, get those early ones, and think about the details. In the main method, I will give you many testing scenarios that you can play with on your own. Try to get the most points as you can in the test. All right, good luck.